Here we go. Let's share AI with people confidently. People first, the people first way. Okay. I believe it's going. Check restream. Okay, looks good. So I'll let people in. All right, and then I'll kick us off. So, hello everyone. I'm Jonathan Flower. I'm an AI engineer and I co-founded Workplace Labs with an industrial organizational psychologist. And so together we do training that brings this engineering perspective and the psychology perspective to help people learn how to leverage artificial intelligence in their work more effectively. And so today you'll get kind of a sampling of some of the mental models that we like to use that make it easier to interact with this tool and start to leverage it. And so today I'm joined by Lindsay, and Lindsay, she's one of the most amazing AI prompters I've ever run across. And so listen in, lean in when she's sharing a prompt today. Lindsay, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I am Lindsay, and I um, have been in the by trade. I am more in the HR space in talent development and organizational strategy. But I decided to cozy up to AI about 5 years ago, and have made the transition to being pretty much AI focused in everything that I do at this point. So I'm very excited to share some of the things I've learned over the past several years with you today to help hopefully you feel more productive and know safe ways to use AI in your daily lives and daily jobs, especially if you get a command from upper leadership that you need to get going with it.
And to
All right.
kick us off, I was just going to talk a little bit about this article from McKinsey. I don't know if y'all have seen this, but I pulled out a little quote there where he talks about how organizations that capture the most value will not necessarily be the ones with the best AI tools. They'll be the ones where HR had the courage to go first and earned the credibility that comes from having done so. And so, like, this pairs so nicely with what we're trying to do at Workplace Labs with our people first approach to AI. And we genuinely believe and have seen this in our masterminds where the opportunity is with people figuring out how to amplify what they're doing, how to expand their potential. And so hopefully you start to see some of that today and how we approach some of these use cases. And so go ahead, Lindsay.
And I think something to know is that we are in and out of organizations every day. And if your organization hasn't figured this all out yet, you don't have policies yet, you haven't had AI training, you don't know what is allowed, what's not allowed, you're not alone at all. And so part of what we tried to do today was think about someone in that position and how can we help them learn to use a company sanctioned tool or maybe even a ChatGPT type tool in a way that keeps you safe, keeps the organization safe, and doesn't cause any extra risk to employees in your organization. And kind of how to work when you're in that messy middle of being told to do something and not quite having all of the guardrails or guidelines around how to do that. Okay. And so Jonathan has this very cool metaphor and analogy that he uses to think about how to use AI.
So the way that I was thinking about this is like if a friend of mine came to me and was like, "Hey, my boss told me that I'm supposed to start using AI." And
Which actually did
what would I
happen.
tell them? And we'll
Yeah.
get into that story. Like this is based on a real life story, true story.
True story. I don't think she's
and
here. True story.
it's like, what would I tell them? And so the two things that I would tell them is this intern analogy, and I would give them this one prompt that I found to be, and people in our courses have found to be very useful. And the reason I like this intern mental model is because if you could just imagine for a second the last time you had some critical deadline that you were up against, what what did you do? Like, what did that feel like? And what would you do if you had a new intern who walked in and they're like, "How can I help?" What would you tell them if you just gave them a quick task and said, "Hey, go finish this analysis"? You'd probably expect to get back a really poor work product back. But if you took the time, maybe a couple months of guiding them through an onboarding process, here, go read these books. Here, go read these policies, these guidebooks. Here's how I approach this, the steps that I go through. Then you give them the task. You're going to get something back that's better, but it's still probably not going to be useful. So what would you do? You would give them feedback. And that's what I want. That's what I encourage people to do is talk to it just like an intern. Give them feedback just like you would an intern and iterate. The thing that makes this special is that with a human intern, it might take days or months or days to get the next work product back. But with AI, it's seconds. So I encourage you to iterate a lot and get to the point where it's something that's useful. And then at the end of that, you're going to ask it like, "Hey, give me the instructions that we developed during this conversation so that I can repeat this in another conversation." And boom, you have something that's repeatable. You have created your own AI intern. And that's the opportunity I see. And the engineering perspective is that it aligns closely with the intern because the intern is, they might be, this AI intern is smart. They have memorized most of the internet, but sometimes they make things up. And that is the nature of AI being probabilistic. It's fundamentally guessing what the most likely best answer is. And so you want to be skeptical, just like you might be with the new intern. Okay. And so that's what I would tell them to just think about and start talking to it, start talking to AI.
And when
And
you
then
do
the
that,
next, yeah, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. No, I was just going to say, I read yesterday that about 44% of what is produced by AI is considered AI slop. It looks really great. It sounds really great, but it doesn't make any sense or it doesn't align to what you asked it at all, which is causing then projects, about 95% of AI projects, to be dropped before they ever reach fruition because it just feels like, meh, it's not working. This isn't it, and people walk away. And so some of the things that we talked about today will lower those for you. But what Jonathan is saying about iterating on it and asking it for feedback and asking and giving it more and more context and then asking it, "Hey, how did we get to a good result?" will reduce the chances of you having AI flop in the future and reduce the chances of you dropping a product in the future.
Yes. Let's push it. Let's push it beyond just responding with the average, like run of the mill responses. You can push it with some of your guidance and how you approach things. Okay. And then the other thing that I would give them is this is the persona, what we, what I lovingly call the persona super prompt. And this is combining a lot of the prompting techniques that I have found really useful and are really useful. And so you're going to tell it a little bit about your role, tell it what you're working on. This gives it an audience and it gives it some context. You maybe have run across prompt templates where it's like, I am this expert, or become this expert and talk to me like this expert. But how do you come up with which expert you want it to become? Well, let's just ask AI to come up with that. It knows about way more experts than you know. And so, what persona should you assume to help me? It'll figure it out. And then we tell it to assume that persona and start asking me questions. And we want it to ask us questions because it's going to gather the context that it needs to be able to help you with whatever you're working on. So that's the persona super prompt. And let me paste that into the chat. And those two things are probably like my favorite tips to give somebody when they're just starting out. And then the other one that I love to give people is I'll put it in the chat, is like if you don't have a good idea of where to what prompts to use, then in here I have another prompt where you just simply ask it, give me 50 practical AI prompts that will help me work faster, smarter, and more strategically. Not all of them are going to be great. There's going to be some nuggets in there, though, 2 or 3 that maybe you hadn't considered using AI for that. So feel free to use those. And the idea here is to try these regularly and experiment, see what's working and see what doesn't.
And something that we've been doing as a team at Workplace Labs that has been awesome. So we have been using the Ask Me questions to get the context you need piece of that prompt for a long time. And it truly reduces the amount of slop you get by a lot. But you can either ask it to ask you questions one at a time, if like a whole list of questions is going to overwhelm you, or what has been really beneficial for me and our other colleague Alexia told me to do this, and I was like, oh, I've tried it, I hate it, and then I made myself do it again, and now I can't stop. Is to use the voice feature. So I talk to my AI instead of writing, and I talk to it like not even a friend. My poor friend wouldn't be able to understand what I'm saying. I'm like thinking out loud. I'm like, well, I don't know. Let me think about it. Reread the question, blah, blah, blah. And so then I'll just basically answer those questions in the most nonsensical interview fashion that you've ever seen. And it will then take all of that and all of my answers instead of me thinking there, sitting there and typing, and it goes so much faster. So much faster. Okay.
Hey, Lindsay, I'm sorry. Which app did you say
You can
that
do it
you
in
can
almost
talk?
all
Is
of
that
them.
all of them or
Yeah,
one
there's usually
particular?
almost all of them, and there's usually like a little microphone, or
Okay.
sometimes like a couple of lines at the bottom, and it's
Yeah.
not it essentially is voice to text, but you
Okay.
don't have to say period. You don't like you can just bleh, and then it knows what to do with it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I see that in Chat GPT. Okay. All right. Cool. Thanks.
And on some of them, like Claude, it will actually then talk back to you if you want it to.
Mm.
So one of the things that I was doing, I had like this concept in my head, and I like knew where I didn't know where I was trying to go, but I knew I was trying to go somewhere, and I couldn't figure it out. And so I turned it on and said, like, I want you to interview me like a podcast host and just keep asking me questions. And I finally I was putting all my tomato plants and figured out this concept that I had been like mulling over for a while. So it's a cool tip. Okay, so our next piece here, Jonathan, do you want to talk about matching the task to the tool?
Yes. So in general, you're looking for tasks that kind of match this, like what we're saying. Like if you have a task that it's okay for it to be average, like that's a good fit. That's what the model's capable of. And it also feels good to use the model for things that are okay being average. Then you get to take some of the time and effort that frees up to focus on what in your work, what in your work where does it actually move the line for it to be really, really sinking good? If you want to, and then focus on that, right? That's where you can spend more of your time, and that's where the AI model is not as capable. It's just pattern matching on what it has seen hundreds of thousands of times. That's what it excels at, regurgitating and giving you back. And so use that, and then use the time that that frees up to focus on the work that where it pays to be exceptional. And
Yeah,
yeah, go
or
ahead.
you can take that average and it gives you a place to start. I know for so many people, myself very much included, staring at a blank page or a blank email and like, where do I even start? The cognitive load that it takes me to just get something on paper is really difficult. And so literally having a slop will help me get started at least. So if I can get something on paper to go from, I also know that I personally work really well from outlines. So I'll have it create outlines for me for something that I want to make my own or want to make excellent, but it at least gives me a structure to go from. And that has made things a lot easier as well.
And the other time I'll reach for it is like when I'm working on something, I just get stuck. And AI is a great unblocker.
Yeah, brainstorm. And that's if you are working in a tool that has access to other things and can actually do something or change something. If you just are trying to work through something, I just make sure to tell it, don't do anything. This is a brain, like I need to brainstorm. Don't do anything. So if you're working in Claude Code or Claude Cowork and it's connected, it sometimes will be like, oh, I'll go change that document right now. And you don't, if you don't want that, just make sure to say, don't do anything. I just want to think this through. Okay, and then the other kind of warning that we would give is just know that if you are trying to use AI for policy decisions or creating source documents, etc., that is always a kind of barely trust and verify situation. Please know that the AI, like Jonathan said, is probabilistic. It's just guessing what the next set of words likely is. And so there are things that you want to be very careful about what you're actually producing and putting out, and obviously not putting anything sensitive into the model in the first place.
And what that means, like what does it mean to be probabilistic? What that how that shows up in real life is you might ask it the same question 10 times and get the right answer 10 times, and then ask that same question an 11th time and it's going to get it wrong. That's that's how probabilistic shows up in real usage. And so even if it seems like it's trustworthy, you have to still, I encourage you still maintain some skepticism.
And that's actually causing an interesting problem for folks that are using a lot of AI. Is it's causing burnout at a much faster rate because we are having to read and assess so much output to make sure that it is correct, that our cognitive wheels are spinning far more than they were before, and we're burning out faster. So some of the things we're going to teach you today are kind of cutting that off at the head and making sure that what you're asking it is enough that what you get out of it is going to be easier for you to assess and make sure that it is quality.
Are any of y'all feeling that? Like feeling some of the exhaustion and just like using AI a lot and then you feel just drained? Okay, we're getting
I'm
some
typically not
nods.
functional on Saturdays.
Yes, yes. So yeah, that one is really interesting. And one of the things that I've started to recognize is that because AI makes everything seem like it's easy, it's only going to take 5 minutes. I have to come up with different ways of prioritizing because my approach to prioritizing before was a lot of times, well, it's going to take too long, so I'll deprioritize it. But now everything can potentially take 5 minutes. And the reality, I think you were nodding about this. Uh, is it Aaron? Okay, Aaron. Yeah, thanks for joining
Iran,
us, by
Iran,
the
yes.
way.
Oh,
Aaron.
my pleasure. My pleasure.
And the is that it's a lie. Like sometimes it'll take 5 minutes, and sometimes I'll get started, and then all of a sudden it's like 2 hours are gone. Like what happened?
Yeah, that happened to
And
me yesterday.
and so it's just like I have to really double down on like, okay, what's the priority? What am I trying to achieve? And really stay focused on that. And don't even start the conversation if it doesn't pass that filter.
I've actually also started telling mine I want to be done in an hour. How should I prioritize this project? So like last night I've been doing, and I'm like, I need to be done in an hour. I cannot. The number of times that on the Workplace Lab Slack, Jonathan and I will be like, I accidentally fell down a 4-hour rabbit hole. And here's what happened. Like, and it usually produces something good, but it happens to us far too often. Jonathan actually created a timer on his screen so that he can hold himself responsible. It's hilarious. It is, but it's
Yes.
a warning. A warning.
It's there's a psychological hack where if you see a timer somewhere on your screen counting down, it helps you.
I would blow past it. I would be like, I don't care. I'm almost there.
It doesn't solve everything, but it does help.
Yeah, and I guess that's part of the conversation, right? Like in your example, your CEO comes to you, hey, can you solve this with AI? If part of that discussion is, well, it's not going to be done in 5 minutes,
Yeah,
right? Reality of
yeah.
it is it could take, days, depending on how complex the situation is. And I think that's one of the things that we have to really educate our leaders on. If they're not themselves using it, right? They've got to understand that we want to make sure it's credible before we just
Right.
hand it over. Yeah.
And another thing that we talk about a lot is I think Jonathan has an actual percentage of like spending 70% of your time for whatever you're trying to output on the planning of how you're going to get that output. So it's not even just go to your computer and start typing. It's spending the majority of whatever amount of time it's going to take you to complete that task, thinking about how you're going to get the best output from whatever you end up actually putting into the AI. And so just use AI for that skips over 70% of the work, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And part of what I have found is like particularly when I'm coding, but also when I'm like creating guides or anything like this, if I just dive in and tell it to create the thing, it's oftentimes horrible. But if I spend 70% of that time asking it, hey, go do research, go find similar things. What are the latest best practices? Teach me about it. And sometimes I'll say, teach me about it. And I don't necessarily need to learn it. Maybe I already do know about it. But oftentimes when I do that, like I do learn something. And then once I've built up that context and the conversation, and then I tell it to build, it's way better.
It also helps you help tailor, like it might think that something is the best practice, but it doesn't apply to this situation. So then you can tell it, like, don't use that piece of information in this project. And you're not spinning your wheels for 4 hours wondering why it keeps doing this thing when you didn't want it to do that. So it gives you a chance to preview the context it's about to use.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the other thing this guards against is cognitive decline. Because if I'm just always going and I'm telling it to build the thing and I'm not learning, I'm not growing, then I'm just going to get dumber.
And I will also say, go ahead.
Go ahead, Lori.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, that's so interesting because you could go down a completely wrong path because maybe what you're coming back with could apply, but if you don't really use your experience and knowledge, I mean, you have to, I mean, it goes back to training your tool and making sure you're asking those right prompts because you don't want to just go with what they're saying, what the tool is saying, because it could be completely off. But it does give you that starting point to get your brain thinking and different generation of ideas too.
Yeah.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Lori. I find the same thing. It's like, it's very, I end up having to steer it down a particular direction when it starts to go off. I will say though, sometimes it is helpful to just explore, experiment, let it go down this path that I wasn't really intending to go. And sometimes that's easier to evaluate if it's a good path or not.
Mm.
And then if it is, sometimes it is, most of the time it's not. And then I can just go back to the path that I wanted
Yeah.
to, or I can keep going down that path.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
Okay.
All right, let's get into some practical application.
So what we're going to do is we're going to take three potential scenarios essentially, and we are going to run real demos on them live and see what comes back and see if we can talk about how we might have improved our prompt to get better results. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to look at an email. So this is all dummy data, that none of this is real, which is a whole other tip. If you want to practice using AI, just tell it something that you want to learn how to do and then say, create dummy data for me, and it will create files that you can then use to practice something without ever putting in real information to the system. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, perfect.
Yep.
So in this situation, Priya is our CPO, and this company is trying to come up with some sort of policy to talk about at their town hall tomorrow about return to office and a hybrid situation. And so she has sent her team a 23-page long, like long email chain. And she's asking for a one-pager back to prep for what they're going to communicate at the town hall tomorrow. She does not want a new policy written yet. She wants what they're going to say, what they're not going to say, and what types of things still need exec approval. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take her fake email chain here. We're going to go over here and paste the email chain in. And then, again, totally fake, made up email chain. What would you say if you were the person that she said, hey, we need a one pager by the end of the day based on this email thread? What might you put in for your prompt?
Your prompt, well,
Like maybe summarize this prompt or summarize this email chain?
yeah, I mean, would you first want it, would you want to prompt it, act like a CEO or HR? I don't know where that
Yeah,
would
the
sit.
persona.
Yeah. And definitely, I guess current trends or best practices. You'd be
Jonathan,
looking.
will what be able to look up best practices?
Yes, it's just you have to turn it on with which icon is it? Is it the plus or the?
Well, before we go any further, let's pause. Did she ask for best practices or did she ask for a one pager on everything they had discussed?
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah, it was just a summarization of all the emails. So
Yeah, take this email chain and I need a one pager.
Right. But wouldn't you want, I mean, there were some inconsistencies, so we would probably want the output to also highlight some of those inconsistencies.
Okay. So summarize the email, highlight inconsistencies of that.
pull out any pending questions. Maybe there's still some questions and that's the reason for the back and forth on the emails. It's kind of hard to know the context.
No, I know
of all
without
the
reading it.
emails.
I know. No, okay, so you're exactly on the right path. And what I love about this is that the idea was that we were going to do a generic, like summarize the email, which is what I thought our group here would come up with. But you guys if you've been listening and are advanced, you're already writing the better prompts that we were going to show. So well done. So essentially, you're exactly right. So let's just look if we just said summarize the email.
Mm.
And it did a pretty good job. It pointed out that they don't know how many people they have in Denver. It pointed out that the different offices have different desires. There's some legal concern happening, etc.
Mhm.
If we let's see. Okay, so it pointed out some of the financial implications, the IT. Don't think did not point out that one of the leadership teams has already told their group what's going to happen. So in the email thread, one of the people here, Jordan, already told his managers they were going to be back 3 days a week starting August 1st, which is obviously a problem.
Gotta love it.
Whoops.
That's real life. Yeah.
It never happens. That never happens.
Yeah.
We didn't hear about that.
That's a big one because
And it didn't
I'm
pull that
sure
up,
at this,
right?
yeah, because realistically, the word's already spread beyond that group.
Exactly. That's a huge problem. And if let's say you're reading this and you just came back from vacation, so you throw it in and say, hey, tell me what I missed. It's pretty important that you know that Jordan already communicated to his team something that wasn't actually decided, right? So now we're going to put in only use this thread. Don't invent any facts. Flag anything unstated as needed needs verification. So basically it's saying if you're going to say something that you don't know for sure, tell me that you need verification. I love that you said to highlight the inconsistencies. Oops,
Do
I don't know why.
you want to put that in a totally new chat?
Yeah, we can. We certainly
Okay.
can. I don't know why it's copying blue, but we're going to just have fun.
Okay.
And then what were
You
the
can
other
read.
things we had? Orion, you had one too. It was
It was the highlight inconsistencies.
the other one.
I lost.
Okay. Okay, and then it's going to say, and now we're going to say, give us 3 decisions that need to be made, 5 key risks, and 3 options for how to reply. So what we're doing is we're putting some structure around the reply. We're saying, don't just summarize it, but I want to understand what decisions need to be made as a result of this. And you want to understand what are risks to these that have been highlighted in this email thread, and what are some options for how to reply. And that way, I've also found that asking it to give me options to do something reduces its confidence, or helps me gauge its confidence on something versus otherwise it will just, we heard the term artificial confidence the other day, cracks me up. It thinks it's right all the time. There's no accidental. So here we have a much better.
So when you're asking it to give you suggestions or in other words, you don't know pile, you're saying that helps you determine it how well, or does it help the
Kind of
LLM at
both.
that point to respond?
Yeah, kind of both, but it helps me see. So when we go down to these options, what I would do is I would say, okay, recommend. Now I would go, so recommend an option and tell me, or I would probably say, for those 3 options, tell me the pros and cons of each option. And then I would say, okay, now considering everything that you have read or everything we've talked about, what's your number 1 recommendation and why? So basically I'm just making it do the analysis.
You're
The way that you would do it.
you're leveraging what it does well, which is pull together a lot of information and make it consumable by you and relevant. And then you're bringing the judgment. You have the actual experience of whatever is related to this so that you can make an informed decision and bring your judgment and your taste.
And you can give it feedback. If it says these are the pros and cons, you can be like, well, actually, I think that con is a pro, and that pro I don't care about, or for this situation could cause a huge problem.
I was just going to ask you, is there a point that maybe you would want to describe the culture, meaning, pre-COVID, we were on site 100% of the time. Post-COVID, we've been hybrid for like turnover related to hybrid requirements. Like, can you give it a little bit more
100%. Yeah,
warm and fuzzy?
we didn't plan to go that deep on this, but the reality is the more context you give it, the better the response would be. So
Sure.
even if you had like a company one pager that you created and gave it as knowledge context, if you're working outside of like Copilot or something, and like this is the org chart and this is the number of employees we have in the industry we're in, and a bit about your culture, you could just add that as context. In this situation, you absolutely could have said, here's part of the problem. We were in office before COVID happened. This is what's come back on the employee survey. There's all kinds of data you could give it at this point to give it more context.
Mhm.
I think the boundary, just like when you're talking to an employee, is like, how much does it need to know? And because sometimes I'll give it context that I think is interesting, but it's going to weigh all of that context exactly the same.
Yeah.
And you might not want it to.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. So now we can see here, inconsistent enforcement managers are all, so it caught the Jordan thing. And it's not making any sort of recommendation about how many days we should do, because that's not what she asked for. She's just asking, what do we need to talk about and what can't we talk about? And then we also have some inconsistencies down here. So do we see the difference in quality in just saying, hey, summarize this email for me?
Mm-hmm.
And the quality of just better quality output and less ignoring of things that are important.
And then talk to us a little bit more about how you came up with, or well, show us again the prompt that we gave it to give us more detailed.
So this prompt we added, use only the thread below, don't invent facts, which please know that you can tell it that and it will marginally improve it not inventing facts. It does not prevent it from, like, it still will hallucinate. That's like take your vitamin every day and maybe you won't get a cold. But if you're going to get a cold, you're probably going to get a cold. Flag anything unstated that needs verification. Highlight any inconsistencies, which was a great add. What would a leadership team need to know? And then the main thing here is that we gave it some structure. We said, this is what I actually want out in it to be included in the summary. Not just what you, AI, thinks is important, but these are the things that I know I need in order to create a one-pager back to my leadership. So that's where your human judgment is coming in, right?
Yes, great. And
okay.
And how do you recommend people come up with a prompt like that? How do they create a prompt like that?
We're gonna get there.
Okay. Getting ahead of ourselves.
So essentially, you're not going to ask it to how to respond to an email. You're going to give it a structure that you can then verify, and then maybe eventually you get to a point where you're asking it to draft an email based on your conversation about the structure, about the responses in your structure. So, like I said, at this point, we could say,
You even asked it for a recommendation, not a definitive response.
right. So now we can say, give me a pros and cons for these three things. And then you can decide which is the most appropriate, or you could mix and match.
Mhm.
Okay.
Just have to giggle, propose a follow-up meeting, another meeting before the meeting, yes.
Can I have a
Love it.
meeting and an email and a meeting and an email?
Okay.
Okay,
Mm.
so demo B is manager comms. So we're going to kind of do a meta project on this. So your boss has come to you and said your team needs to use AI. That's all they said. Your team needs to use AI. There's no official policy. It's still a legal review. You have to email your managers this week, and you have no idea what to put on there. How might you start that? Where's my new chat button? Oh, there's. How might you start in AI? What would you tell it?
I mean, think like an HR leader. Um, is it simple, like just provide examples of how AI is used?
And maybe provided context, like who is the audience?
Well, okay, so we've got managers as the audience.
But is it managers in organization? What kind of organization? Like we would
Yes, so
want to give that kind of
okay. So
audience.
let's just pretend we're in a financial services.
Would this be a best practice? Like, give me examples of best practices and how they're
And
I don't know,
maybe
top five operations or tasks that are AI it's supported by AI or
or would make the most impact using AI.
right. Mm.
So I actually kind of thought that we were asking to create 5 different emails about 5 different things. No, dear team. Okay, this is very long. I don't know about you guys, but would anyone in your organization read an email that long?
No chance.
Not even
That was
a
my
little bit.
previous meeting.
Well,
But
what they would do is they would feed it into AI and ask it to summarize.
if they're
Summarize,
using
yeah.
AI, right?
Yeah.
Would they even open it? Would you open an email with that subject? It doesn't actually tell them that they're supposed to be using AI, right?
Right.
We also did not say, absolutely did not say, that they should be using it to do important things like financial forecasting. That's a problem for a bunch of people that don't know what they're doing, right? We also didn't tell them that we're going to use it to enhance our fraud detection capabilities. That's a lot to put on someone that has never opened a GPT, right? So this is pretty not good. That's sloppy. It looks great. It looks confident. It looks like something you might get, but it's not going to meet the mark. So what if we did something more like this and filled it in? So first, what is a tone we would want this email to be in?
Formal?
I'm sorry,
Formal?
formal.
Was it considered mandatory or was it just exploration of AI?
They just
Oh,
want
wants it. Okay.
adoption,
Yeah.
maybe informative.
Yep, I like that.
Email, okay. And then now we're going to put in our audience. So we had managers in a financial services company that is leery how do you even spell leery? Due to compliance requirements. Okay. About interim expectations using AI, because we know they don't actually have an AI policy yet, while our official AI policy is still in legal review. Highlight 3 practical guardrails managers can use this week. So now, again, we're telling it exactly what we want in that email. We're not just saying like, hey, come up with an email. And we did say we wanted like 5 best practices, but in this situation, we're leaning more towards guardrails, more towards safety. We're going to tell it how long we want it, because clearly all AI loves to produce a wall of text. So let's say less than 250 words. We're not going to make any promises about tools. So now here we're putting even more guardrails around it. So I don't want you to include any of this. Don't say anything about tools. Don't talk about what data is allowed. Don't talk about what AI can be sent with, like that's all policy information that is still being fleshed out for this company. And then we're going to say add a disclaimer. Check the manager hub for updates when legal publishes the final policy. So this isn't like, hey, can I have that prompt because I'm going to copy and paste it, right? It's just thinking about the ways to constrain it. What's the tone you want? What's the audience? What should the AI output? What the AI should not output, and how long you want it. So immediately it's acknowledging that we don't have a full understanding of where we are. And it's acknowledging we know you might be apprehensive. This is what we're aiming to provide. Always do these things. And then please remember to stay updated by checking the hub. Thanks for your cooperation. Better or worse than our first version?
Much better.
Much better. Yeah.
Okay. Do we see the benefit of putting that 70% into the planning? And we didn't necessarily tell it, we could have told it, act like a communication comms person, or act like a change management person, or come at it from a legal position. We absolutely could put a role at the front of this, but when you're giving it enough context about the tone, the audience, etc., you'll get pretty close to where you're trying to go.
This is maybe a little off subject, but have you gotten into or seen where the company is just, right in this exact spot? They know they want to try it, but there's a lot of legal concerns, compliance, all the things that we know make some companies leery, but like training employees in using AI tools.
Yeah, that's Jonathan and I are in and out of organizations almost every day doing that exact thing, and almost none of them have a policy yet. So we teach them about dummy data. If they are many of them are in Copilot, so they're able to have access to their internal data. But then we teach them a lot about how to think about data, how to prepare data so that AI can understand it well. And we teach them how to think about data that is old versus data that is new. We teach them to think about data that comes from their vendors. So if they're thinking about benchmarking, pulling that from something like a Gartner or a CD Insights or something versus using, Reddit to become your benchmarking. Because that, again, when it's scanning the internet, it's not it doesn't have that third grade skill of understanding the source very well. You can say use reputable sources. In almost any research thing I say do not use Reddit. Do not don't, and can I guarantee that it's not using Reddit? No. But I am gonna go check all the sources and make sure it's not in there. I love Reddit, to be clear. I read it almost every day. But when I'm doing research, that's not where I want my research to come from. Did that answer your question, Lori?
Just a general, just curious.
It's very common, and we're trying to teach people best practices that would apply in any situation. Wouldn't you say, Jonathan?
Yes, we try to be as like try to where it makes sense to be general, like we're general, and then we try to provide when we're talking to an audience that's in a particular group, we'll pull in examples to try and draw out what that means for them. So
Real
having the
life,
frameworks and the mental models, and then like here's how to make it useful for you today. And that's a lot of how we're finding it resonating with people.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay, so that we don't run out of time, I'm going to do these last two without our initial group chat. I'll just show you. So this is basically turning meeting notes into action items that I can send to the team. Pretty straightforward. It's meeting notes, and we're just going to hit go. And what I have found many times is that it will make assumptions about who is supposed to do what. Oh, it didn't even create a table like I asked it to. It just gave me a list here. So
it did like a plan.
Yeah, it did. It's interesting.
I haven't seen it do that before.
You could. Yeah, you could.
It's a new feature.
Oh, down here, yes, I noticed that yesterday. It is creating tests now. Okay, but oops, what if we gave how could you give it better boundaries, like we've been talking about? Guardrails. So now I have read these meeting notes, create a table. I want an action item, I want an owner, and I want a deadline. None of that was in here. There's no deadlines or anything like that. There's a little bit of ownership.
Yeah, there are some deadlines down there, looks like.
Oh, down here there are. Down here there are.
Five
yes,
and yeah.
Yes. But here's a gap. We have something to do on July 21st, but who's going to do it?
Right.
We don't know. Okay. And we're going to say, if there isn't one, if an owner isn't set or a deadline isn't stated, we want market TBD. The first when I was testing this one last night, that's why I was kind of surprised that it didn't have owners here. It was randomly assigning owners to these blank tasks, which it does all the time. Or it'll say like, it'll make up a department that thinks is responsible for something. So now we see we don't have a deadline. Deb is responsible, but we don't have deadlines TBD. Here, we don't have anybody assigned for this man training session. So now we can very quickly see what gaps we need to fill to get this executed. Make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. So in this one, we're saying instead of just asking action items, we're asking it for an actual project table, essentially, that is then also going to flag things that it doesn't know. And you can take that even further by saying, like, break down these tasks into deadlines, etc. You can start project managing if you want. Oh, okay. All right. Your turn. What's something that we can do on the fly? And Jonathan will walk us through how to do it well. What's something that you wish you could hand off to somebody or you could do with AI?
Yeah, is there something that you're running into today that you're curious how AI might be able to help you with that?
Well, Lori, I don't know if you want to go first.
Yeah, I'm not in the workforce today. So
Okay.
if you have a real life example,
I do.
Iran, please go for it. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So I have a very large batch, and maybe I don't know if this is the method to use this. So I have a large batch of resumes for a senior level position that I need to summarize for senior leaders to help them in the review process. And I'm talking about, let's say, more than 100 resumes.
And your ATS isn't doing that for you.
It's not providing a summary now.
Okay.
Of the actual resume or of the batch of resumes altogether? Like, do you want an overarching summary for some reason? Like,
No, not overarching. Just
okay. I have thoughts, Jonathan. Do you want to go first?
So the way that I would approach this is, let's see. Here, I'll share my screen. Okay, so I'm using a similar tool. This one is actually running completely locally on my Mac, and it's offline. And so what I have done on my Mac is I've defined some shortcuts so I can put in some of my favorite prompts. And so there's my persona super prompt that's in there. And so I'm going to tell it what I'm working on. And so I'm going to tell it that I'm working on this large batch of resumes. Let's see what happens. So it's going to assume the persona of an experienced talent acquisition partner and resume analyst. How does that sound? And it wants me to think of it as someone who has spent years working with hiring managers, deeply understands what makes a strong senior level candidate.
So this
Yeah.
is an example of when it's jumping into directly doing exactly what you asked.
Mhm.
I would actually recommend that you, in this situation for resumes, be very, very, very careful about how you're using AI when it comes to talent acquisition and resume reading, summary, essential, etc. I would probably ask it, help me think of a process to do this in the best way versus can AI do this? So how can I create a prompt that will summarize each resume, looking for these specific things, but in an unbiased way? How can it find transferable skills? How can it,
Yeah, I was looking just for it to just summarize, not provide any judgment, but
yeah,
just
but summary, it could. So I saw something the other day, or I heard something the other day that one of the reasons that ATSs are kind of accidentally biased is that they are, especially for like engineering things, which have historically been male, they will then discount a resume that says like that someone was the head of the women's chess club. So making sure that when you're asking it to summarize, that you're doing some due diligence on the front end of how can you eliminate any bias in the summary of the email or in the summary of the resume.
Mhm.
But you can use AI.
Right.
That might,
And so it's like a prep step, right? Where you take
Yeah, it's your 70%.
all of those applications or resumes and like try to get rid of things that it might use to throw it off and be biased, and then have it do the summary.
Yeah, it's part of that 70% prep, thinking through like what are the risks of having AI do this and how can I mitigate those risks. But you can see that when he added this, AI is a consumer product, and it makes money by making you happy and doing what it thinks that you want to do it to do. So you have to always be thinking about how could that get me in trouble? How could it hurt someone? How, like, you have to be super diligent on the planning front end.
Okay, and what I did, it actually didn't do a great job of asking me in multiple choice. But one of the things that I like to do is whenever I'm about to start writing whole sentences to respond and answer the AI's questions, I refuse. And I tell it to ask the questions again in multiple choice so that I can simply answer with 1A, 2C. And so a lot of times I'll end up just selecting from the multiple choice like that, and I don't have to type near as much.
But
It's
it just labeled it 1A, 1, 2.
yeah, it's not give me
Still not doing it for you. Yeah.
choice.
And I think this
multiple choice answers. But
this goes.
we have 1 minute left. But does that help you understand?
Oh, we do.
Yes.
How you
No,
would
absolutely.
approach this?
And I'm glad that this came up, even though it wasn't what we were looking for, because this is what I was experiencing, part of, like, with AI. And I think that's what a lot of leaders that are asking people to go and do, like, AI projects, but you don't always get what you ask. You have to plan it, and you have to,
Right. And so really, what I would have suggested is you could still have started with the super prompt that Jonathan showed you, but your goal would have been to create a plan
yes,
for how, like, so you're just going one step back. And I think it's just best practice. And it's hard when you're in the, like, you've just got to get something out to be like, just kidding, I'm going to sit down and make a plan. Like, it is hard, but you will prevent yourself from being 2 hours later being like, oh my gosh, why isn't this working? Help me create a plan. The goal or the objective is to create a plan that will produce unbiased, helpful summaries of these resumes. Start there, and then you can move on to actually doing the work.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, we're at the top of the hour.
Yes. So thank y'all so much for joining. And I'm going to drop in the chat real quick a link to a guide that will help you, that just kind of expands on the intern mental model. And then here's another one that will help you create a personal meeting notes prompt. And so those are two of the guides. And thanks again for joining. Please continue to follow us on LinkedIn. And we have the main thing that we're getting ready for is that we have our premium mastermind cohort coming up in October. And we would love for y'all to join us. That's a 5-week intensive with your peers, and that's where we really get to dive into these things deep. So,
Lori, we were in the same one, right?
What's that?
I think you and Lori, you and I were in the same mastermind cohort.
Yes. Yep. So much. All right, guys. Good to see you. Thank you for your time.
Good to see you, Lori.
Very helpful.
Thanks for joining, Erin.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Andrea. There she goes. She was here. She never came on camera.
Okay. Now what do I do? Oh, yeah, that was your friend Andrea. Okay.
Yeah,
we didn't get to say hi.
I'm
let
not
her tell a little bit of the story.
That's all right. I feel like that was good. Iran was like writing notes furiously. So that makes me happy.
Okay, let me see. So Alexia said there were between 3 and 5 people on LinkedIn throughout.
All right.
She joined from LinkedIn. Yeah, certainly. Like I do definitely have a better pipeline now for like creating the LinkedIn posts and the descriptions in Disco and all the stuff. And I I don't know if you saw, but like in Disco, like I have a whole email sequence that I
No,
defined.
I didn't see it. That's cool.
Yeah. And
Nice.
so, but I mean, we just didn't. I'm afraid our Disco email